Welcome everybody to this edition of apps.com reporting apps for QuickBooks Online, Qvinci and Fathom. This webinar is done by myself, Hector Garcia, in collaboration with Intuit's apps.com and Accountant University. Today is May 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern, and we're about to start. So my name is Hector Garcia. I'm a certified public accountant and a QuickBooks Pro advisor. I live and work in Miami. I actually have my own classroom here next to my office in Miami, where I teach other accountants and even end users on how to use QuickBooks. I'm a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network, so I do webinar videos, articles. I do tons of content related to QuickBooks and Intuit, and I'm very excited to be here doing this webinar today. If you want to check out my blog, just go to www.qbblog.com. All sorts of QuickBooks topics in there. And I'm a co-presenter of the QB Power Hour, which is a webinar series all about QuickBooks as well. There's my email and my Twitter if you want to reach out to me directly or send me comments or questions, etc., etc. So the learning objectives for today: after attending this course, you'll be able to navigate and find apps on apps.com. You will understand the value of using reports as part of your consulting and accounting engagement. And in some cases, we can use built-in reports in QuickBooks. Sometimes we need third-party apps, and we'll discuss the two specific third-party apps and what they can do. So you can start thinking about how that will work in your practice, combining your accounting and consulting engagement with reporting apps. We will utilize the functionality of these two specific apps of Qvinci and Fathom. You'll understand how to get information out of it that maybe you cannot do with QuickBooks. So we can get additional information and insights that you cannot do with QuickBooks built-in reports. We'll also talk about the type of customers, the type of businesses that would benefit from using these apps, and where you can bridge that opportunity there. Perfect. So if you're brand new to the world of apps for QuickBooks, if you have never connected an app to your QuickBooks Online, recommend that you take a picture of this link, or we'll just go ahead and copy and paste it. If you don't have the deck, I'll copy and paste it on the chat. It's a good video to watch. It's basically an introduction to the world of QuickBooks apps. That way you kind of get a more deeper understanding of why apps and the apps ecosystem for QuickBooks Online. So real quick, what's an app? In the context of QuickBooks, an app is an application designed to perform functions that QuickBooks Online is not specifically meant to do. Maybe it could do some of it or maybe not completely. In some cases, an app could do similar things. Like, for example, I can do financial reports in QuickBooks. I can do financial reports on apps. However, they tend to specialize on specific niches or industries or types of transactions that are a little bit beyond accounting functions and weren't necessarily built into QuickBooks in any way. However, the common denominator is that in QuickBooks, all the financial information is there. So you wouldn't want to retype that information somewhere else to be able to pull special reports or do other functions that apps can do. Some apps themselves are platforms. That means they can connect to other systems that are not just QuickBooks. In the case of these two apps allow you to import from multiple accounting systems, not just QuickBooks, and you can also import raw data from Excel. So I mean, these app platforms can do other things than just connect to QuickBooks, but connected to QuickBooks is probably one of the most important features that it has, and the reason why you're attending the webinar. So why use a third-party app? So because QuickBooks Online cannot do it. You may be tempted to walk your client to using a different application, a different accounting system that can do whatever it is that the client is looking for. However, Intuit is not focused on making the software do everything that could possibly be done. Intuit is focused on making an open platform that's reliable, scalable, and is essentially the operating system for core accounting transactions, allowing QuickBooks to be best in class in the accounting world and allowing third-party developers like Qvinci and Fathom to be best in class on the analytics and reporting world. So that's why there's a reporting app, and that's why Intuit doesn't build in all these features into QuickBooks itself. So table of contents for today, we did the introduction, what are apps and why apps, we covered that. Then we're going to talk about built-in QuickBooks Online reporting tools. So I'll probably spend about 10 minutes or so just going over what QuickBooks Online can do now, and then we'll discuss some of the limitations. Then we'll talk about reporting apps as a whole. So I'm going to list all the reporting apps that are available now. So you even beyond Qvinci and Fathom, you can see the other alternatives out there. We'll do a demo on Qvinci, we'll do a demo on Fathom, and then we'll talk about what I like to call the accountant's opportunity or the consultant's opportunity, which is, what are we looking for to extract from our clients in terms of engagement, that we can do more work beyond the core, or maybe what the client expected we could do. We can offer more services. We have an opportunity to differentiate ourselves, et cetera, et cetera. And then we'll do just a quick demo of the apps.com website, just to kind of get you an idea on how you search for apps and connect apps to QuickBooks and that sort of thing. Okay, all right. So first, let's start with QuickBooks Online and the built-in reporting tools. So I'm going to switch over to QuickBooks here, and let me maximize the screen here. Okay, so this is my QuickBooks Online sample account that I'm working with here. To pull reports, normally we just click on the Reports tab on the left side. Okay, and then the minute you click on the Reports tab, you're going to notice a couple of reports groups. We're going to see Recommended, we're going to see Management Report, Frequently Run, My Custom Reports, All Reports. You're going to see all sorts of different options there. So Recommended is going to have the most common reports, most common report set, right? Like the company snapshot, profit and loss, balance sheet. On the management report, something that we're not going to go too deep into, you can watch other webinars that have covered that, is to create packs of reports, more for sort of monthly full report engagements. But management reports is a little bit of an attempt to do what some of these apps can do, but you're going to see these apps go a lot further. Now, frequently run is the reports that you run most often. So if you run AP aging quite a bit, let me go back here, and then let's say you also run AR aging quite a bit and a P&L quite a bit. Once you go into the reporting menu, into frequently run, you're going to notice that all the ones that most of the ones you frequently run will show up there. Now, my custom reports would be when you save a report that you modified or you customized. And then all reports, of course, is going to contain all the categories and every single possible report that you can pull from QuickBooks Online. And then finally, if you're logged in as an accountant, there are some reports that are sort of hidden for the end users that only accountants can pull, like adjusted journal entries or adjusting trial balance, that sort of thing. Okay, so let's start with regular company snapshot here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on company snapshot right there under the recommended section of reports. And then we're going to get to see what QuickBooks Online has available now. Okay, so QuickBooks Online, it has this group of graphs here that are available now that gives you basically the overall snapshot of the company. So we have one major group is my income, right? And then this is based on the income category. So notice that for this year, we have 40,000 in tax and accounting, 38,000 in hourly support, 15,000 in bookkeeping services, and so forth. If I click here where it says, for example, last month, then that would give me the same report, but just for the previous month. Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory. Same thing here under the expenses tab. If I want to look at last month, then I can see, where all my expenses are going, right? So you see my biggest expense right here is the management fee or rent of our office location here. Then we go down and see previous year income comparison, and we can see this by quarter or by month. So you can actually just kind of compare how you've been doing year after year, right? Depending on how much data is in that QuickBooks file as well. And then we'll look at here, it says all accounts. I can choose only a particular income category. So let's say only my group live classes, for example, and then we can compare these month to month, or we can just compare them quarterly. So we can kind of see, how my sales of that specific income category compare to. And then we go onto our expense categories, and then we have a whole bunch of expense categories we can iron out and just do live course materials, for example, and we can see, how those move. So there's quite a bit of a few graphical snapshot style type of options, but as you can tell, that's about it. There really isn't that much power beyond that. So I'm going to click on reports again. So knowing that that's really all you have access to in terms of graphical snapshot type of reports, let's move beyond that and let's talk about the actual financial reports. So let's click on profit and loss here, and then we're going to see a standard profit and loss. Now this is already having enabled the redesign reports add-on, which it's only available on certain companies. So we're going to click on the gearbox and click on QuickBooks Labs. Now within our next couple of months, I would say by summer of 2016, you will no longer have to turn off or on redesign reports. Right now, this is kind of a beta, so you have the option to go back to classic reports or redesign reports. This is almost done. This is pretty much very functional as we speak, so we're going to be working off the new redesign report. So a couple of sort of low-hanging fruit elements here. We have the collapse button right here. So if I click on that, every single account will be collapsed. And then I can also collapse the major categories if I wanted to as well. So we do have the capacity to do that. Here was a sort. I can sort by showing the biggest number in the top, the smallest number in the bottom, that sort of thing. Okay, here where it says show non-zero and active only, I can have it also show every expense category that actually has a zero as well. So by default, QuickBooks will not show you any income categories or expense categories with zero values. By clicking on all, it will certainly do that. So I click on all and click on run, and we're going to see a whole bunch of categories that maybe are not being used anymore, or are duplicated, or just to have zero activities. And then you can see all those show up with blank. So if you don't want to see that, this is where you only put here active and go back to run. That's what that's for. Now, period to compare. So for example, let's say I'm looking at last month and I want to compare it with the previous month. This is where I can put previous period, and previous period will actually compare it with, in this case, if I'm looking at last month, which is April, this will compare it with March. But if I put previous here, that is going to compare it to April of 2015. And if I pick this year to date, which is also kind of useful, it will actually show me the current month and then the last 4 months and all the way up to today. So when I click on save customization, sorry, not save customization, not yet. I'm going to click on run report first. We'll do save customization later. And then here we go. So we have our first column here is our April, right? I'm kind of zooming in by hitting Control Plus. So my first column here is April, and then I have March, which is my previous period. That's what that PP means, right? And then I have April of 2015, which is the PY. That would be the previous year. So just kind of a couple of quick tips here on how to do reports here in QuickBooks online. So when I click on Save Customizations, that's when I can save it with all the properties, right? So I'm putting here previous period, previous year, year to date. That's what I'm saving it for, and I'll click on Save. That way, if I ever lose this report, I happen to be in some other page, I can just click on My Custom Reports, and that would be right there. Now I'll show you one more quick trick before I jump into the apps. Let me go into the reports menu here, and then I'm going to click in recommended, and then I'm going to go into the balance sheet. And then let's say I want to pull my balance sheet. I'll do this fiscal year to date. Where are you? This year to date. There we go. And then I'll also do that column, that previous period, and dollar change. Now that dollar change is really important, dollar or percent change, because that provides some additional context as well. So there's my balance sheet with the dollar change. And I'm also going to go ahead and save that customization. I'll put balance sheet with previous period comp dollar, and then I'll hit save. So now I have two custom reports. I want to click here on the reports menu, and go to my custom reports. There's my 2 custom reports in here. I can actually schedule any of these. So I can click on edit and I can say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead on and set a schedule and say, you know what, I want this to be emailed monthly every month by the, let's say 6th of the month forever, to myself. Okay, so basically, and I can put here report. Basically, I can do this, hit save and close, and then basically once a month, I'm going to get that report emailed to me automatically. Now, the other really neat thing about this is I'm going to click edit again. I'm going to make this part of a group. So I'm going to call it monthly group reports, and then I'll go ahead and click on save, and then I'll go to save and close, and then I'm going to make both of these part of the group. And what's really nice about this is what I like to call a hidden trick in QuickBooks. If I wanted to create one PDF file of all of the reports grouped together, I would click on this action button here and click on export as PDF. And that would basically generate my profit and loss and my balance sheet and pretty much everything else I have in there. And I'll create one PDF file with both reports in it. So that's one of the real neat tricks about using save reports and reports group. All right. Okay, so that's really all I wanted to show you about the built-in reports. Just wanted to show you just a quick review of the things that you can do there. So there's one more thing that I wanted to show you. I did miss it, exporting it to Excel, and then the report filter. So good thing I had the slide there to remind me. So let me go back and pull up that profit and loss here. I'll click on profit and loss. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll all the way down and click on net income. Okay, so when I click on net income, I'm going to see all the details here. And then I'll just show you, I'm going to go into my filters, okay, and say, look, I only want to see certain information. Okay, so here on the gearbox, let me just zoom out for a second here. So if you look at the gearbox there, I can show it what type of columns I want to see. So if I only want to see, let's say, the date, the transaction type, the number, I'll get rid of split, memo, balance, okay, something like that. Then I basically essentially change the type of columns I want to see. So that definitely affects that. And then I can also run filters and say, look, I only want to see certain types of accounts. I only want to see income accounts. I only want to see expense accounts. I only want to see certain customers. All that stuff can be done through the filters. Here on the top left, on the top right, sorry, there's a customize button. You click on that, and then I click on filters. And then I say, look, I only want to see transactions for, these customers here. So I actually get to pick, which customers I want to see them for. Click run. There may not be any there in this case, but that's what filters are for me to only show certain types of accounts. Let's say under distribution account, I only want to see, let's say, only expenses. So I'll put all expense accounts and then click run, and then you would see only expense accounts. So that's the concept of filtering. And also you save that customization to not have to pull it again. And then you click on that little icon there that looks like a little square and an arrow to then choose if you want to export this to Excel or to PDF. So that's really all I wanted to cover on that this time. For real, that's it. And then management reports, as I mentioned, it's there. It's an option. I'm not going to customize the management reports, but I'm just going to show you what they look like. So I'm going to click on reports, and then I'll click on management reports. And then these are the preset ones. So I'm going to go ahead and export this as PDF or view it if I wanted to see what the report looks like. And then we're going to see, in this case, the management report that contains a profit and loss. It contains a balance sheet. It contains a table of contents. It's also sort of a report group, but it can also have a cover. It could have a table of contents. It could also have disclaimers. It can have notes. So management reports, it's a way we can have a group of reports all bundled together, designed for us to pull them up periodically, typically for an accountant to give to the management or for the bookkeeper to give to management. So here you see a whole bunch of different types of reports all bundled together. All right, so let's go into, let's talk about apps themselves, okay? So before we do that, write down the keyword. If you are getting CPE, go ahead and write down the keyword. The CPE the CPE keyword is frog, frog. So CPE keyword is frog. All right, so write it down. CPE keyword is frog. Somebody's asking, will these slides be available to the attendees? If you look in the chat box, there's a link, and if you click on that link, it'll take you straight to a PDF of this slides. Okay, so last time CPE keyword is frog. Going once, going twice. So write that down towards the end of the webinar, or at the end of the webinar, you have to answer the correct CPE keyword in order to get your credit. Perfect. So the reporting limitations that we have in QuickBooks Online. So I show you a couple of tricks here and there. How do we do reports in QuickBooks Online? And the reason why we work with apps, right? So number one is we don't have comprehensive KPIs. KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. And a KPI is typically a combination of financial measures that has some sort of significance, like a financial ratio, like return on investment or return on asset. That's technically a KPI. But a KPI could also include financial statement information and non-financial statement information. So a typical KPI that they have in a retail store, like a Best Buy, for example, they will have total sales, right? Let's say total sales is 100,000, and then they divide that by the total number of transactions. So they can total sales by number of transactions will give you the average ticket size. They can also take information like total sales divided by total number of people that visited the store, which is not necessarily people that bought, some didn't, some were families, right? Could have been one transaction, but that gives you another KPI, which is average number of sales per foot in the door, per foot traffic. So those are examples of KPIs. They don't always contain financial information only. Sometimes they're a combination. So QuickBooks cannot do any of that. The other thing is there are no alerts. So although I can schedule reports to be emailed to you monthly, daily, whatever, QuickBooks won't warn you and say, hey, warning, you reached this level, or your inventory is under this level, or your accounts receivable are over the desired amount. QuickBooks Online cannot do any of that. We also cannot consolidate multiple QuickBooks companies. So if I'm running multiple locations, multiple businesses, there's no way for me to use QuickBooks to do that. So we would need a third-party app for that. Also, you saw the graphics that we have. They're very limited. They're nice, but they're very limited. So there isn't a lot of options for visuals, charts, and graphing options to complement the numbers. There's also no industry or peer benchmarking. So there's no way for me to know how I'm doing it, how I'm doing financially stacked against other people in my same industry. Or maybe I have 6 or 7 locations and I want to know which store is doing the best or the worst, or which one is controlling costs, which one is selling the most, which one is it has a lot of inventory or less or more inventory. That sort of thing, peer benchmarking, or within a company, consolidated financials benchmarking is just not available in QuickBooks Online. Also, there's no way to, as I mentioned earlier, to combine financial information with non-financial information all into one report. So there's no way to have sort of a dashboard type of report. And then there's no comprehensive cash flow report. So you'll get a standard cash flow statement. And then there's no room for forecasting. You can do budgeting, but not forecasting. So there's no way to do like a what if analysis, saying, what if I sell double what I did last year? What would that look? What would that do to my bottom line? That stuff is not in QuickBooks Online. So when you think about a QuickBooks reporting app, don't think of an app that can do the same thing that QuickBooks Online does in another app. That's not what it's for. The app is really there to go beyond this limitation. So where QuickBooks ends, typically third-party apps start. And this is true with the 2 apps that we're going to talk about, 2 of my favorite reporting apps for QuickBooks Online, Qvinci and Fathom. Okay. All right, so let's talk about comparing them. So Qvinci and Fathom, they both have a lot of things in common, and they both have things that they're specifically known for. So what Qvinci is known for, I mean, what Qvinci made a brand out of, is doing multiple company, consolidated, or franchise type of reporting. So if you're running multiple franchises or multiple locations or multiple companies, and you want to maybe pull reports by city, by state, by co-owner, by the type of store, whatever, you can create real nice groupings and do multiple location or multiple franchise reporting. Also, the capacity to do consolidations and create a standard chart of accounts that multiple companies can translate into in order to pull a report that makes sense, right? Because if you have two companies with two different chart of accounts, that would be a really messy consolidation. So that's something Qvinci is well known for that. Also, ranking and benchmarking between the locations, and on top of that, industry benchmarking. That's what Qvinci is best known for, at least from my perspective. This Qvinci didn't tell me to say this. This is how I see it. Now, what is Fathom best known for? Again, Fathom can do some of the report consolidation, and it can also do some of the multi-company ranking and comparison. Yes, but it's not best known for. Fathom is best known for their KPIs, a very unique visual system to do analytics in a whole different way. I mean, Fathom is extremely innovative, and you'll see it once I do the demo. You will see that, and they also have really nice and comprehensive cash flow reports and grow and trends analysis reports. So that's how I compare the two apps. I don't think these are mutually exclusive. Like if you have one, you can't have the other. I don't think that's the case. However, in most cases, people won't really run two apps at the same time for the same company or company group. So if what you're looking for is consolidation, I would think about Qvinci, franchise type of clients, Qvinci. If you're looking for visual key performance indicators and visual action plans in terms of driving behaviors within a company based on the financial numbers, I would say Fathom is probably best for that. Okay, so let's talk about all the reporting apps that are right now in apps.com. So I wanted to, before I jump into those specific apps, I wanted to not alienate the entire app spectrum that's out there. So if you go to apps.com, okay, and you search for reporting apps, you're going to see a lot of applications. So the ones that I've used, the ones that I could identify as being apps designed for reporting, are the ones on this list. And doesn't mean that there isn't any more apps out there that can do reports. It just means that in the apps.com website, these are the ones that you would see. Compatible with QuickBooks Online through apps.com. So we have Qvinci, Fathom, Spotlight Reporting, Finagraph, LifePlan, Corelytics, Bodhi3, Fiscal Checkup, StratPad, and Float. And if this webinar was 6 hours long, I could do all of them. The good news is that there's already recording of previous webinars on Spotlight Reporting, on Finagraph, and LifePlan. I don't know if any of the other ones have actual webinar recordings, but I know at least the top 5 on this list are, so they're the most popular, the most commonly used. Okay, so if you go to apps.com, this is what it will look like. You will see all the options there. Even if you filter with reporting, there will be some apps there that are not technically reporting apps, like the time tracking one or Beanworks, the tools you see in the bottom. But they do a little bit of reporting, so that's why they throw them in there. So I would reference this particular list as your reporting apps if you're out there comparing different reporting apps. Okay, so let's start by doing a demo on Qvinci. So we'll start with Qvinci. Before I jump in, let me just double check that there is any questions. Somebody says, I would love to see comparison across all apps in all categories. Deborah. Yeah, that would take quite a bit, but I guess that would be a good idea. That's what these webinars are for. Okay, so Qvinci. So to connect when you open up Qvinci, it will ask you connect your QuickBooks file. Now, with Qvinci specifically, you have to be very careful about how you plan consolidations and locations to be reported. Okay, for example, if I have multiple QuickBooks Online files and I sync them together, Qvinci will ask me, do you want each QuickBooks file or each company file to be treated as a single location? Or do you want to take your classes or your locations within a single QuickBooks file and split those off as if they're multiple locations? Let me explain what I mean. I have a client that's a franchise owner of Dunkin' Donuts. He owns about 8 or 9 franchises across 3 different states. In one state, he has one legal entity that runs 3 Dunkin' Donuts. In another state, he's got 2 legal entities running 3 Dunkin' Donuts, one under one legal entity, two under one legal entity, and then on a different state he has one by itself. So what happens is he's got a combination of locations, not just by company file, but also by class or location inside QuickBooks Online. And Qvinci gives you that flexibility, which I find it to be incredibly useful, okay, because of the situation that I'm telling you right now. You can also sync QuickBooks Desktop. You can also sync the other accounting software that starts with an X that I won't mention. And you can also just sync raw Excel data as well. Okay, so that's sort of the type of files that you can export or sync with Qvinci in order to do the report. So one of the features that you you think of when you do Qvinci is you can connect multiple companies and you can consolidate them. So you can have one in QuickBooks Online, 6 in desktop, one uploaded through Excel, something through Zero, that sort of thing. So it can all combine them. So it's sort of QuickBooks is accounting software agnostic. You can combine all of them no matter where it came from. You can create multiple locations either by company name or classes or locations. And you can do in-depth chart of account settings, which we'll talk about, which is how we consolidate 2 or 3 or many companies that have different names on the accounts, but they essentially mean the same in a consolidated report. That's what that's for. Now, the dashboard is the first thing you'll look at, which is basically just a graphical interface of all the information combined together. And then, so the dashboard, you can switch back and forth across stores. By the way, if you have a client that's a franchise owner, there's nothing else in the world you can do for them that will make them happy than give them the capacity to monitor the financials per store, per location, per state, whatever, within a few clicks. Because that's one of the most difficult things to do with some of these clients that are running multiple locations, is having a simplified way to consolidating this information into a simple visual dashboard like this. So that's the great thing about Qvinci. Also, in Qvinci, one of their signature things that they have is the standardized chart of accounts, where maybe in one QuickBooks file you have electricity, telephone, water, all as separate accounts, and maybe in a different one you have all of those consolidated into a single utilities account. So the problem is, because the accounts are not the same, if you didn't do the job of making sure that every single QuickBooks file runs with the same chart of accounts, you may have to use Qvinci to translate, in this company they're called this, in that company they're called that, and we're going to unify them together. The other nice thing about Qvinci with the standardized chart of accounts is you can choose to omit certain information from a consolidated report. So for example, let's say that we have some expenses that belong to one of the owners of one of the franchises, and they're sort of personal management expenses, that sort of thing. And we don't want to consolidate those because they're not part of the consolidated calculation. We can choose to omit those particular set of accounts from specific stores on the reports. That in itself is extremely powerful. So they do solve for that problem, right? Because Qvinci is the franchise reporting expert. I don't think I've met any other company in the United States that is so focused to franchise reporting. That's their niche, and they've had almost every situation thrown at them, and then through their settings they have created a solution for that. So this is basically what the report looks like. I'm going to open it. I'm going to open the app live and show you what this is. But this is kind of what it looks like when you have a lot of locations like that. Okay, and then when you go pull the report, these are the options you have. You can do ratios, you can do P&L, you can do rank, you can do trial balance, you can do expenses by vendor. So consolidated expenses by vendor are very commonly requested report across multiple franchise locations. Okay, so let's go into the product demo here, and this is Qvinci. Okay, so what you're looking at here, let me log back into my account. So what you're looking at here is Qvinci, and the first thing you will notice is the dashboard. Okay, so this dashboard contains your summarized information, um, all organized into these boxes. These are called widgets. If you click on the top right where it says select widget, you can actually pick and choose what is it that you want to see. So if I don't want to see certain widgets from here, I can I can select them, and so I can add them, I can remove them, and I can also change the order if I want. Okay, that's what this is for. And I click save, and then it changes the dashboard. So the dashboard has its own options there. You can choose. I mean, they're not that extremely powerful in terms of the amount of widgets. That's an area that I would probably say Qvinci, we're working on creating more widgets there. But in terms of summarized information, it's mostly what people ask for. The next step here is to click on filter locations up here. And this is where I can say, I want only one particular store. And then I hit close. And then I would see the reports filtered by one particular store, or, whether they were founded uh, before, or maybe I can actually pick and choose here which stores I can pick. So this is like the nice thing about using these filters, that I can change the location and it will give me the information per location. But beyond that, the reporting section, this is really the bulk of the work here. So in the reporting section is where we actually tell it what type of report we're looking for. So we'll start with easy to know, easy to understand. We'll start with the profit and loss, and then we'll click here on the profit and loss, okay, the first option. And then it's going to ask me, all right, so what's the date range? So here, this is where I pick, when this fiscal year, this calendar year, last month. So I can just pick, last month if I wanted to, right? So I can just do last month here, or select a custom date range if I want to. That's also an option. Then it says here, well, you want to have columns by month, by quarter, by location. So I can do this by location. Okay, so that's by location. And let's do that by last month as well. Last month, so last month by location. And then here on the right, I can say account mapping. That means if I want to reorganize based on my chart of accounts, standardized chart of accounts, I'll show you that. Then we have the vertical analysis, which basically compares everything to sales, right? Then it tells me here if I want to show a graph, include the average, include the company average. So this is all different options, and most useful for comparing across the board. So I click on build my report, and then it will take my two locations. These are my two locations here, and it gives me my revenue per location and the combined amount on the right side. Okay, and then I see my graph, quick graph representation at the top. And then I see all my cost of goods sold, all my expenses. Now notice that all these say unmapped, unmapped, unmapped. That's because by default, this is doing it just based on the general categories. So it's not deeply breaking them down. If I were to do something a little bit different, where I click on reports and I do profit and loss, and then I take out account mapping, because that means I don't want to remap the accounts, and I click on build report, I'm actually going to see the profit and loss in the exact same way, that this is shown or created in the QuickBooks file. So the problem is that I have two companies that maybe do two different things, and they have two account categories that are not used in the same company. So it's going to make this report very, very long, because technically you're looking at two P&Ls put next to each other. And if the accounts don't consolidate, like for example, in bank service charges consolidates in both of these, but obviously automobile on one company is called automobile, and the other company may have a different name, maybe car expenses or something like that, and they don't consolidate. So this is why you get a lot of zeros across like that. So this is what Qvinci has a signature solution for this, which is the standard chart of accounts. So I'm going to click on manage, and then I'll click here where it says standard chart of accounts. That's what SCOA means, standard chart of accounts. And then I can create just my own group of accounts here, right? So I can create an account, and I'll call it services, and then I'll click on add, make that an income account, just do services. and then I'll create another account called products. You know exactly what I mean in 1 minute as soon as I start connecting them together. So I created one income account called services, one called products. Let me go ahead and delete what's there now. Okay. And I'm going to now do the mapping, right? So I'm going to go into here at the right side, and I'm going to go to settings here and edit. Actually, not settings, that's a different place. Give me 1 second. I'm going to click on tools because they actually redesigned this. So I'm going to click on tools, and I'm going to click where it says map standard chart of accounts. So sorry about that. So that's where you can do the mapping. So first, so under manage standard chart of accounts is where you create your new consolidated chart of accounts. Under tools and map would be where I tell it based on the company where each of these is going to be. So if I tell it, listen, all these here, let me select all these are going to be mapped to products. And I click on map selection. Okay, so that mapped everything to products. Okay, if I want to change some of these, so let's say I'm going to change a couple of these here, and just changing a couple of these here, and I want to map these into services, so I click on map to services. So then in a nutshell, I told it from company A, I want these to be mapped into products. From company B, I want those to be mapped into services. So then when I run my report, I hope this worked. I actually didn't check if those accounts were being used. And I do the account mapping. Let me do this by location again. And then I go to build my report. Then you're going to see things built into products and services. So you can have one chart of accounts for your consolidated report that is completely different than the chart of accounts on each specific company file if they don't happen to be the same chart of accounts. So this is actually really, really great. And this is one of the really great things that Qvinci is known for. And a couple of other interesting things Qvinci can do. You can set up alerts, right? And you can say alerts, listen, if certain account, I can say, look, if this account reaches a certain value, go ahead and alert me, and I can do it per company across all companies. So I can say, look, each company has let's say a budget of 10,000, but I can just create a budget across all companies, let's say for 30,000. And if I do reach out the total of the three and they go to over a certain amount, I can do that. So it's really interesting things I can do on the alert side, right? Think about, we discussed that QuickBooks Online cannot do that, cannot do proactive alerts. And then there's a couple other options here, like health check. We can just, pretty much look into to see if there's any essential issues with AR, aging, or receivables report. So this can tell me if maybe during the sync, not all the data came in, and that may be causing Qvinci not to report correctly. That's what health check is, and it actually walks you through how to fix all of those. So that's really Qvinci in a nutshell. All right, so Qvinci pricing. If there is a basic account that has just basic reporting features, and then there's the pro account that can do the alerts, it can do the standard chart of accounts, it can customize a lot of the reports. That's $14.95, and this is per company per month, per company per month. I don't know if Qvinci has special arrangements with discounts if you have 20 companies, 30 companies. I assume there is, but I don't want to talk about that. This is just the pricing that's on the website. So for most people, $14.95 is what you're going to pay per company, right? So this is obviously if you are talking about 10 companies, this is $150 a month. So how I sell it to most clients that tell me, wait a second, I have to pay $150 a month for reporting. I say, well, how much time you spend now consolidating by hand in Excel, or how much money will you save? How much money will you make by having this information at your fingertips per 10? So it does seem like it gets pricey once we have large amount of companies, but nobody has ever complained about pricing once they get all that value from it. Okay, let me just check real quick to see if there's any questions. Let's see. Is Qvinci help us at training end users that don't know how to use it? You know what? Good question. Obviously they trained me on it, okay, but I was doing the webinar, so I'm not sure. I do know that people over there are super nice, and the few questions I've had, they've answered it pretty well. But I don't know if they actually do training per se. They do support, but training, I'm not sure. We have these webinars. I'm personally going to do other webinars for Qvinci this fall. We're gonna do more webinars about features, just because I almost always do webinars for almost all the apps. So yeah, that's out there. But I would go to Qvinci directly and find out if they got all other types of training. Somebody says, do you make your clients pay for Qvinci, or do you pay for it yourself? Great question, Karen. So there are clients that they request for me a turnkey price that includes pretty much everything. And for those, I factor in the cost of Qvinci. I mean, when I tell my clients that I will give them consolidated reporting, um, any accounting firm out there that offers consolidated reporting as a service, you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars monthly, because they typically use real sophisticated software to do this. I mean, Qvinci could essentially replace $2,000 to $3,000 engagements from the big firms to do consolidations just with this standard chart of accounts. So yeah, it could take a lot longer, um, but I mean, it could take a lot longer to set up. But once that's there, that's pretty fast. Somebody says, can I do businesses across different stores and locations? So yes, entities and locations, they both can be separated. Somebody says, is the pricing per location or per QuickBooks file? The question is per QuickBooks file. So if you have two QuickBooks files with 6 locations under it, that would still be two units. Then somebody says, does it do elimination entries? I don't want to answer that because that's kind of an advanced feature, but technically, if you had another company file where you did journal entries to eliminate them and you include them in the consolidation, then you could do elimination entries by doing it in a separate file just designed for this. But I don't know. I don't think Qvinci has a module for those. Anyway, so let's move over to Fathom. Fathom is the other app. So Fathom, one really interesting about Fathom, which I don't think Qvinci has, is if you're a QuickBooks Pro advisor, you can request a free account, 100% free account, as long as you're a pro advisor, and this is for your own firm, not for your clients or anything. I don't know if Qvinci has a free account for your own firm. I don't know. I mean, they're known for consolidation, so they would have to give you free multiple locations for it to work. So I don't know if Qvinci does that, but I know for a fact Fathom has a free account because I have my free account through Fathom. And you can sync Xero, QuickBooks, Excel, and MYOB. So Qvinci can't do MYOB, but it can do Xero, QuickBooks, and Excel just the same way Fathom can. So they're similar from that perspective. So what are the features that really jump out when you think about Fathom? So think about highly visual KPIs. So make it really easy and visual to help your clients, understand your financial numbers. Alerts, right? So Qvinci has alerts too, but the alerts can be based on KPIs, not necessarily on the raw numbers. So Qvinci has calculated fields, but I didn't even get into that. But if you do create a calculated field, then technically you could do an alert and a KPI, but Fathom for KPI alerts is just a lot better. And then we have complete analysis reports, which I'll show you which are great reports to give to clients that are just beyond consolidation, more into KPIs, and the combination between financial and not financial data that makes Fathom very unique. So just a couple of slides. The KPIs are things like, accounts receivable days, like what's the average number of days that you're getting paid in, or the profitability ratio or margin, right? And with KPIs, you can compare them against a target to see if you're on point. So yes, you can do this with budgets technically, but you can also do sort of budgets or targets for calculated fields or KPIs like accounts receivable days. So, and you can also see the trend. Is it, did you meet budget? Are you over budget? You can also organize them by how important they are and how much priority you should give them. And then you can see a quick trend analysis comparison to see if you're under or over a certain a comparative month. Now the cash flow analysis is really, really nice. you can see a difference between cash received and cash spent, and it's all organized and grouped into the categories that they fall into. So this is actually a much better way to show clients a cash flow report or a statement of cash flows. Most clients just don't really understand a statement of cash flows. This is actually a really, really, really cool graphic way to show a statement of cash flows, and it's much easier to understand because you see all the components of how all these things are affect your cash. So I really love the cash flow report. And similar to Qvinci, as I mentioned earlier, you could do multi-company comparison, right? And it does have real nice graphic multi-company comparison, right? But although Fathom can do it, who's known for multiple company comparison is Qvinci. However, Fathom, knowing who they are and what they do in terms of creative visual effects, it makes it really easy to kind of visualize where you stand in terms of all the multiple companies, and you can hover over any of those and know what company it is. And then also, as I mentioned, the trend analysis, you can see a real graphical over the years or over the month how a particular KPI or value in your financial statement has changed over a period. And you can see when and where they cross. So you can see where expenses cross income and stuff like that. So you get a real visual understanding of where the company is going, where it's been, and that sort of thing. Okay, so let's do a product demo. So let's go over to Fathom here. Okay, so there we go. So let me just, before I go straight into the report, this is what Fathom looks like. This is your company, my company's page. If you have multiple companies you're managing for multiple clients, or maybe your own companies, they will all show up in here. Okay, you can group them together, which is going to be useful then for consolidation. That's also possible. And then here, this is the one company I have. And under the setup screen, this is where you do the standard stuff. This is where you sync your QuickBooks. This is where you can add budgets. Okay. This is which I can upload from Excel. This is where I can add non-financial data. So as I mentioned before, we can have non-financial data. So there's a couple of interesting options here in terms of the type of fields that I can bring, right? And then there's some predetermined fields in here that you have. So you have tons of predetermined fields here, like break-even margin of safety, expense to revenue ratio, inventory days, gross margin. I mean, there's all sorts of KPIs we can enable and disable here, because obviously you want to be careful with having too many, right? Because you will get analysis paralysis. You have way too much data to look at, and then you are what they call it. Data rich, information poor, right? So this is where you get to do the setup. Now, if you go to analysis, this is the core of Fathom. Like this is where Fathom is what it is, right? So here we're in the analysis report, and these are grouped, right? So we have profitability, and then we have all the profitability categories, and this is going to match our income categories as well, that sort of thing. And then if I go down and I look at efficiency, right? Return on equity, return on assets, and then I can see the numbers. I can see how they compare to my target, if I met or exceeded my target, and how they compare. If I click on any of these, like for example, working capital absorption, what the heck is that? So when I click on that, now I get where's my little cheat sheet? Oh, there it is. So this pops up and it tells you, okay, this is specifically what working capital absorption is. This is the formula of how we came up with this. This is the graph of the changes of working capital absorption. This little X tells you that you're under or over your target. Okay, it gives you the actual number. It gives you your target. It tells you what's the change. It tells you whether it's important, not important, but you can choose that. So if you wanted to give your client even learn yourself a in-depth lesson about how to analyze their financial statements, all you have to do is connect them to Fathom, go line by line, explain it to them, understand it with them. I mean, one of the most valuable engagements you can have with your customer, it's reviewing everything in detail, what they mean, giving your client an education about that, and also learning in depth about the company by this interaction with it. It's a lot easier to pull one of these, look at revenue growth, and then discuss it with your client, than saying, tell me about the growth of your company. If your client can tell you whatever they want. But when they see the graph there, it evokes new thoughts, it evokes new memories about backtracking to figure out where they did right, where they did wrong. So this could give you a real valuable insight into your client and how their company works. Okay, I'm gonna pause for a second so we can run the polling question because we're about some people have to leave at top of the hour. So we're gonna run the polling question for the people that need their CPEs. When the polling question is over, we are going to do the last piece, which is just the last thoughts about Qvinci, a bit about Fathom, and then what I like to call the consultant's opportunity, which is sort of my last words in terms of what I recommend you do, in terms of picking up new clients or looking for opportunities using apps. Okay, let's see what other questions. I don't see any more questions about. No questions about Fathom so far. Okay. Okay. So if you need your CPE keyword, please answer it now. Okay, because I'm gonna take it away in about 30 seconds. Somebody's asking me, Hector, which one do you like better, Qvinci or Fathom? It's hard to. It's like choosing between two kids. The, for franchise clients, I think about Qvinci immediately. Fathom can do some things, but typically I think about Qvinci. For clients that are really bad at numbers, where you give numbers and they mean nothing to them, you give them percentage and they mean nothing to them. The ones that really like graphs, I think this is it for sure. Somebody says, what's the best way to figure out differences across apps? You know what? This is really the only way, because every app manufacturer will tell you that there's, like if you ask Qvinci, how do you compare? They're going to tell you they're better in every way. If you ask Fathom, they're going to do the same thing. So I think having, a peer watching a video, watching a review, reading a review from people that actually use them, like me, I would say, yeah. And then somebody says, how do you pick the right ones for your clients? You know what? That is part of our initiation. We sit down with the client and try to ask questions that are beyond accounting, like how often do you look at reports? How often you think about profitability? Who else in your company would benefit from proactively knowing how you're doing financially other than you, the owner? And how would you want them to visualize it? We get really creative on the type of questions that we ask, so then we can make those better decisions for them in terms of what apps they could be using. Okay, let me close the poll. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, poll closed. Okay, which is better, Fathom or Finagraph? You know what? Finagraph is a whole other thing. Finagraph is not a Finagraph. It's hard to explain. Finagraph is similar to Fathom. I would say in some ways it's easier to work because it's got less information. But in terms of visual representation, it's gotta be Fathom. Fathom's got the best visual representation because I've only shown you this part. When I click on KPI Explorer, now your head's gonna start really turning, because think about these are the KPIs, right? This looks like a report. As an accountant, as an accounting professional, this is the type of thing that you're used to seeing. This is not overwhelming, even your clients. But now let's click on KPI Explorer and think about what these people did. What they have done is they took that same KPI analysis report and they've organized them into groups here, okay? And they just gave it a 0 or an O for good and an X for bad. This is all based on whether it's within target or beyond target. So it allows them to just kind of focus on the bad ones or look at the good ones. So it's like a really interesting visual representation of what's on track, what's off track, and what's your percentage. And it could be really rewarding to improve these numbers. Now, we have sort by perspective and sort by results. By perspective, what they mean is like the categories. If I click on results, then what it's going to do is it's going to put all the ones that are under budget or under target on one side and all the ones that are on target on the other side. Okay. Now you can say, look, just show me the ones that are not on target, so off track, and by perspective. So it's another real visual way of looking at that. And you can also organize it by importance. So you can put the critical, high, medium, low in there. So if my revenue growth is critical and my operating profit is critical, then we're going to be making immediate actions around here. That way people are not focused on the left side, they're focused more on the right side, that sort of thing. Okay. There's also the profitability KPIs, okay, which give you a quick break-even analysis, which is that break-even point. So if you have clients that sell product that have profitability aspects on the items, that sort of thing, um, and that was going to give you your break-even point, and then you're going to get to see where your profits move based on variable costs, and then you see where you actually stand versus what you actually paid. So very cool visual representation, and then we get a quick graph in the top that kind of gives us all that stuff. So let's go to cash flow, and this is what I was alluding to earlier. This is kind of a statement of cash flows report combined into a visual KPI and also a little bit easier to understand sort of system. And then all of these have a little have a little question mark. So if you're not sure what some of these are you can just highlight over them, and it basically tells you how these numbers are calculated, and you can see you have a negative net cash flow and why. So this explains cash flow in a much easier way than just a profit and loss and your balance sheet. Then we have our growth and trends analysis. So we can actually see, and it actually draws the report so you can actually see where you're going, and it gives you quadrants, whether you're growing with quality or you're growing with stress. So growing with stress means we are, selling a lot but not have a lot of cash flow, that sort of thing, right? And then we're gonna go if we lower our expenses, then we have efficiency gains. So that's what this is, and these have multiple ways of showing. Like I want to compare my free cash flow versus revenue, so I can kind of see over time, how much stress I've put in my cash. So this stuff is extremely cool, and this is even animated stuff. So it doesn't always have to be animated, and then when I click on trend, we get to see. In this case, it's just revenue over time, but then I can compare my revenue versus, let's say, return on assets, and I can have two interesting metrics that maybe they're related to each other or maybe they're not, and I can add different layers. So let's say, for example, I want to compare my cash on hand with my revenue with my return on assets. So think about what kind of insight you can have by visualizing things this way. So that's what I meant by, Fathom is kind of the king at the visualization of financial statements. Then we also have a goal seek, where this is where we actually say, look, my goal is to get to certain amounts of fixed expenses in compared to revenue, and my goal is to get, and I can actually do this is goal seek is a what if formula. So I can say, look, if I increase my fixed expenses by this amount, what happens to my bottom line? If I decrease my expenses, if I increase my prices, right, by a certain, what happens? So depending on where I want to get, right? So if I wanted to get to operating margin of, let's say, 20%, I can just move these left and right and know exactly, how far or how close I'm getting to reaching my profit, depending on specific metrics, like volume, price, fixed expenses, things like that. And then finally, you got your standard financial statements, right? Your standard financial statements. I'm going to have my profit and loss. I'm going to have my balance sheet, just pretty standard stuff with a little bit nicer visual representation, with a little pop-up for all the sub accounts. So if this is all collapsed automatically, but if I click on any of these, I get my pop-ups, and I can do this by, based on a year, based on a month, and then I have my, my variances based on my comparatives. Here's where I can choose what comparative I want to have. So this is basically, all the and KPIs and analysis options we have under Fathom. And lastly, we have the reports. The reports are basically everything put into one. So if I wanted to have an engagement with a client that in a monthly basis, I give them a report, I just click on full report here, and it creates one PDF with virtually every single page that we looked at here. And then it puts the name of my company, right? The name of the company that was done for, and here's an executive summary. And this is the real valuable piece, because the observations are written for you, so you don't have to say the observations. These are these are based on well-studied, you know, observations from other accountants, other consultants. This is the type of conversations you want to have with your clients. So you can actually talk about all these observations and create action plans for the future. And then it gives you basically all of the KPI results based on how they're organized, you know, all the profitability analysis, right? All your categories, top revenue accounts, top expenses. I mean, again, this is, I mean, when I sit down with my clients and show them this stuff, they're just blown away. And you know, for as little we're paying versus the value we're giving, people are just completely blown away. Okay, all right, so that's Fathom. Okay, so let's wrap up this webinar. I know we're a little bit over time. Fathom is $40 per company per month. There is tiered pricing down to 29, 19, and 14 based on the number of companies. So if you're an accountant or a multi-company business owner, you will get better pricing per company as you have more volume. And as I mentioned, if you're a QuickBooks Pro Advisor, you get a full, complete free account for your own firm that you can use to demo and play with it. Okay, so finally, the accounting professional and consultants opportunity. Okay, so if you have a client that you're doing multiple companies and there's a potential consolidation or combination, like so combination not the same thing as consolidation, or multiple comparison across companies, then Qvinci is something you want to really strongly think about. And you know, I've seen people spend 10 to 15 hours a month doing these things by hand. So I mean, whatever the cost is minus or 10 or 15 hours, you see what the value is. For Fathom, again, as you saw it's all about your visual representation, KPIs, get people thinking about what the numbers tell about the story of the business and how can they fundamentally change their behaviors to make their businesses run better based on hitting particular goals in your KPIs. And it's a very visual, easy to use way to work around. So those are the two opportunities that I see. Now, apps.com, let me just show you apps.com. So if I just type in up here, apps.com, we get to browse all the different apps that are out there. So here's Spotlight Reporting, which is another reporting app. And then we get to see all of the apps and we get to see them based on top rated, like for example, T-Sheets and Method, the two top rated apps in the apps.com website, right? And you can sort these by categories. So if I wanted to go to reporting or maybe something else, this is where you get to see them. Any of them that you click on, let's say I click on Qvinci, most of them will have an introductory video, will kind of explain to you what the app does. There's reviews, so you can hear from other QuickBooks users, you know, what the experience with the apps. There's the pricing, right? That's the pricing that I mentioned earlier, that we mentioned. And then there's, you know, support. So if there's any support number or a particular website or maybe more training materials, those you all see there. And then if you click on Get App Now, this is the same thing as if you have your QuickBooks Online file open and you click on apps.com. This is apps.com here, or just apps is how you search through apps. And once you click on Get Now, most of these apps have free trials, fully functional free trials. So you can just kind of add them through here, right? Don't run the free trial, and then you can go to the website and log in and you can see all your data. It typically takes about an hour or so for most apps to sync all the data. Some are within minutes, really. But for reporting apps that have to sync a lot of data, those could take a little longer. Okay, so that's the apps.com website in a nutshell. Check out the resource center in the apps.com. They have more videos, recorded webinar, tips and tricks, and articles. I've written 2 or 3 articles for that website, I think. And there's, you know, thousands of apps in the apps.com website. All right, so we put the CPE keyword. I want to see if there's still any questions and answers. Let me see. Can I use Fathom with a different accounting software like Oracle or SAP? So Ilan, I think that if you can extract the financial statements from there, you can upload them as in Excel. So I would say yes. Somebody says, do both of these work in QuickBooks Desktop? The answer is yes, Steve. Both these apps work in QuickBooks Desktop. And you know what? That's huge for me because yes, I love QuickBooks Online. Yes, everybody's moving to QuickBooks Online, but there's still a lot of QuickBooks Desktop clients. And sometimes, and what I love about it is I can mix. So I can have 1 or 2. I have a client that has 2 companies on desktop and 3 in online, and I can consolidate them all together with these apps, so for both apps. Okay, so last note, QuickBooks Connect in October, save the date, October 23rd and 26th, San Jose, California, best QuickBooks conference in the world, or probably only QuickBooks conference in the world run by Intuit. Let me put that slide again. Let me see if there's no other questions. Let me just check here real quick. No other questions. Okay, so check it out, qbconnect.com for the QuickBooks Connect conference, apps.com to check out the different apps, and obviously, intuit.com or quickbooks.com to learn more about QuickBooks Online. Thank you very much for attending today. Hope that this was valuable and you learned something, and then hopefully we'll post up the recording by the end of the day today. Thank you very much.